Kyle Larson confirms he will not race in Indianapolis 500 in 2022. Greg Biffle says he wants to run more Cup Series races in 2022. And Ty Gibbs is officially confirmed to the 54 for Joe Gibbs Racing. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories and motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off with the paint schemes and the sponsorship news. Let's jump into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Ben Rhodes' 2022 Extreme Hair Therapy scheme that we're going to see at Daytona, as Ben Rhodes has partnered up with Hair Club for 2022 as well. This paint scheme's all right, in my opinion. It's very used to like traditional schemes we've seen from Ben Rhodes, the gray and the blue and all that stuff on the car. I think it's a decent paint scheme, in my opinion. Not my favorite, but it's a decent paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2022 Pie Barker scheme that we're going to see in the Truck Series opener at Daytona and a couple other races as well. Paint scheme's all right, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan. I wasn't a really big fan of this paint scheme last year. And again, this year, I'm not overall a big fan of it. But it's cool to see that a partner is coming back for 2022. Hopefully, we'll give them some good runs in 2022 as well. The next main scheme we're going to take a look at is Chandler Smith's 2022 Safe Fly scheme that we're going to see throughout the 2022 season. Very similar to the usual Safe Fly schemes we've seen for many years. I've always liked the Safe Fly schemes, though, so nothing bad to say about the scheme. They did a really good job on it, and I'm looking forward to, once again, see this out on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next main scheme we're going to take a look at is Drew Dollar's 2022 Lynx Capital scheme that we're seeing the Xfinity Series opener at Daytona. Not a big fan of this paint scheme, to be honest with you. Don't really like the color contrast that they use for this car. I'm not a really big fan. I don't think they did a really good job on it. It's not really that great. I don't like the colors on it, and I'm really not a big fan of the driver either. So maybe I'll have a good run, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Brandon Jones' 2022 Swiffer Menard scheme that we're going to see Daytona season opener for Xfinity. Paint scheme's decent in my opinion. It's not that too bad. I do like the yellow Menard scheme. That's the main contrast of the car. Also do like that a lot, and hopefully we'll see this car on the hopefully do good on the racetrack in 2022. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Jesse Lowe's 2022 Shriners Hospital scheme that we're going to see at Daytona this weekend. I love this paint scheme. They did an excellent and a very good job on this paint scheme. Shriners Hospital schemes always look really good. Love the color contrast on it, and hopefully this will give Jesse a little. Hopefully we'll give him a good run this weekend. It's really hopefully he'll have a good run this weekend. Next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Todd Bodine's 2022 Camping World scheme that we're going to see for 6 races in 2022. I love this paint scheme. I also love the fact that Todd Bodine's coming back, but I love this freaking paint scheme. It's absolutely incredible. They did an excellent job on it, and I'm really happy to see he's got this paint scheme in 2022. They did an excellent job on it, and I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brett Moffitt's 2020 Circle B diecast scheme that we're going to see out of the Charlotte Roval. Love this paint scheme. Really good job on it. Very similar to the usual Circle B diecast schemes, but I have been a big fan of the Circle B diecast schemes in the past. They did a really good job on it. I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2022 as well. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Jason White's 2022 Power Adventures scheme that we're going to see in the Truck Series opener this weekend at Daytona. Now, I believe this truck has qualified its way in. Decent paint scheme, in my opinion. Not much to say here. It's a pretty decent paint scheme. Jason White hopefully will have a good run. Hopefully he's make his way in. Hopefully he'll have a good run here at Daytona. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Austin Wayself's 2022 Airbox AM Technical Solution scheme that we're going to see at Daytona. Love this paint scheme. Not a big fan of the driver, but I really love this paint scheme. They did a really solid job on it. Really good job. Love this paint scheme a lot. Hopefully we'll have a good run at Daytona. Next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Brian Brown's 2022 Ascend Galaxy scheme that we're going to see at Daytona. Not much to say here. Decent paint scheme, in my opinion. It's good to see that he has another sponsor other than that LGB coin sponsorship that he had. It's good to see that he has another sponsor that is willing to work with him, and I hopefully we'll see a good run for Brandon Brown this weekend. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Matt Crafton's 2022 Mold Armor Menard scheme that we're going to see in the Truck Series opener at Daytona. I do not love this paint scheme. I do not like the green on the front. I'm not a big fan of the color contrast on this truck. It's okay. It's not really that good. I'm not overall a big fan of this scheme. I hope Matt Crafton runs something other than Menards, because he's ran Menards for pretty much his whole entire career, but I know that they've got a good long-term commitment with him. So maybe I'll have a good run, but to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this paint scheme, to be honest with you. And the final paint scheme we are taking a look at is Haley Deegan's 2022 Monster Energy scheme that we're going to see in 2022. Very similar to last year's paint scheme that she had, but I like that paint scheme a lot. Monster Energy always brings really strong and really great paint schemes. This one is no exception. They did a really good job on this paint scheme, and I'm looking forward to see this on the track in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Spring Kansas Cup race, as they have a title sponsor, and the title sponsor is going to be Avon Health, and it'll be called the Avon Health 400. Avon Health has been stepping up to the plate in NASCAR over the last couple of years, and I think it's really cool to see that Avon Health is going to be stepping up to the plate once again and sponsoring the Cup Series race at Kansas. Last year was the Bushy McBush race, so it's cool to see that Avon Health is stepping up to the plate. I wish it was still called the Bushy McBush race. I think that'd be really, really awesome, but I think it's really cool to see that they are going to be sponsoring the Cup Series race at Kansas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Celsius. Now, if you notice on the shirt and the fire suit of Brad Keselowski, you notice kind of a new sponsor on there, and that sponsor is Celsius. It looks like Celsius is actually going to sponsor Brad Keselowski this season at some point. Now, maybe it's just for the fire suit. Maybe they're just using it for the fire suit. But I'm very intrigued to see if they're going to use this not just for the fire suit, and maybe they're going to use it for more events on his car. Maybe they're going to have a sponsor for his car. Maybe that's something that we're going to see throughout the year. Overall, I think it's cool to see that Celsius is stepping up the plate, and I'm glad to see that they are going to be sponsoring Brad Keselowski in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Mahindra. As Mahindra's 2022 Daytona 500 commercial that's going to feature Chase Briscoe and Tony Stewart was officially revealed. One thing I've loved, especially over the last couple of years, is the fact that we've been seeing more NASCAR commercials happening with NASCAR drivers. And one thing that can do is bring fans in. I think that's something that's really, really awesome. And the Mahindra commercial, by the way, is absolutely incredible. They did a really good job on it. And hopefully, maybe we'll see some momentum from that commercial, but I'm not expecting momentum from that commercial, to be perfectly honest with you. Not expecting much from that, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Riley Herbst. As it was announced yesterday that Riley Herbst has officially joined KHI Management. Actually, this is on Wednesday. But he's officially joined Kevin Harvick Incorporated Management. Now, Kevin Harvick Incorporated Management has multiple drivers in their team. Of course, Kevin Harvick and his son Keelan are part of that. But also Ryan Preece and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I think a couple other people are part of that KHI Management as well. And one thing KHI Management will be able to do is help Riley Herbst throughout his career. Basically, this keeps Riley Herbst in a ride throughout his career. Even though Riley Herbst has not performed very well, this will keep him in a ride in 2022. Overall, it's cool to see he's part of that. Again, I'm not expecting much from Riley Herbst this season, but I do hope and pray that maybe he'll also get runs, to be honest with you. I'm not expecting much from him in 2022, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Jusan Hamilton. As Jusan Hamilton is going to make history, as he is the first of African-American official for the Daytona 500. He'll be the third official to call a Daytona 500 history. David Hoots called it for many, many years, and I can't remember the other guy that was the race director, but Jusan Hamilton is going to be the race director. I think that Jusan Hamilton is a very, very good race director. He's done very, very solid throughout his career. I think he's going to do a really, really good job in the Daytona 500, and I'm really happy to see that he will be doing the race directing for the Daytona 500. I think he's actually going to do very, very solid and a very good job, and I think that we'll see him do really good this year. I expect that we're going to see some really good things from him, and I'm really happy to see that he will be doing that here in 2022 as the race director. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Kyle Larson. As Kyle Larson says, his trip to Abu Dhabi last year was eye-opening. He realized the rest of the world doesn't care about American motorsports as much. Now, remember, Kyle Larson won the NASCAR Cup Series Championship. We look at how big the event Abu Dhabi was and how many people watch the Abu Dhabi race, right? Well, a lot of people don't care. Again, there's a lot of people that, of course, are going to watch Formula One, then watch NASCAR. And look at Formula One's growth, especially in the United States. There's been a massive growth for Formula One in the United States when it comes to the fandom and the drivers out there. And look how popular drivers are compared to NASCAR Cup Series drivers. Kyle Larson is not as recognizable as a guy like Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton is. And again, it's Kyle Larson being very eye-opening, but you look at how many drivers, and of course across the world, NASCAR is not really as big worldwide as Formula One. Formula One is the biggest motorsport out there. So in my honest opinion, it really isn't a surprise to me that Kyle Larson has these thoughts, but also is not a very big surprise to me that we're seeing him talk about this, to be honest with you. So I think that's something that's really, really important, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Kurt Busch. Now, Kurt Busch was on Sirius 7 NASCAR Radio during Media Day, and he says that he didn't know that this contract would come up for him at 23XI Racing. And he did, and what he said was he wanted to actually, he did that little video, remember that Monster Energy video promo that he did last year? Well, he did say that he really didn't want to get rid of that itch, and basically said, hey, Monster Energy wanted him to commit once that second 23XI car became available. 23, basically, Monster Energy said, go after it. And then he also made a call out to Mark Martin and made a call to Mark Martin and talk him, reach him out about what he would do in that situation. It's definitely very interesting because Kurt Busch, of course, is going to be driving for 2311 racing this year. I think that they have a lot of big expectations for this year, especially with Kurt Busch coming onto the team and a lot of the big advances and changes that they made over 2311 racing for this season. Overall, it's very interesting that Kurt Busch decided to basically make out a call out to Mark Martin. I think a lot of drivers, especially when they get older, decide if they're going to try to call out to Mark Martin, talk to older drivers to see what they can do in that situation. Overall, in my opinion, I think it's very, very interesting and cool to see that Kurt Busch made a call out to Mark Martin. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, Bubba Wallace also speaking to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on Media Day, and he says that Kurt Busch is awesome, and he doesn't think anyone is better at helping out with a new car than a guy like Kurt Busch. I think Bubba Wallace is really, really on point with this. Kurt Busch is someone that really can get the best out of his equipment, and Bubba Wallace always seems to know what he's. Again, Bubba Wallace is pretty smart when it comes to the sport as well, but Kurt Busch is a driver that I think is really going to be a big excelling point for this year. And Kurt Busch, of course, a NASCAR Hall of Famer. In my honest opinion, I think he will potentially be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think he's potentially going to win multiple races in the Cup Series here with 2311 races. And Bubba Wallace definitely bringing up a very interesting point about how good Kurt Busch really, really is. And I think he's going to be a big benefactor and a big asset to this team going into this year. So I think Bubba Wallace talking about how good Kurt Busch is going to be this year. I expect 2311 Racing to have a big year in 2022. I'm really excited for this team, and I cannot wait to see what this team can do in 2022. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm really excited to see what happens for this team, and hopefully we'll see some great things from 2311 in 2022, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Will Rogers. As Will Rogers on Wednesday was announced he will drive the 33 for Raymond Brothers Racing in 2022 for 2 Truck Series races and 2 Xfinity Series races. In Xfinity, he'll drive at Auto Club and Circuit of the Americas, and in trucks, he'll run at both road course races at Sonoma and Circuit of the Americas as well. Will Rogers is a very, very talented racer. Made some select starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series last year with Sam Hunt Racing. Performances weren't that great, but let's be real, he had a mechanical problem at Watkins Glen. And I think he finished in the top 15 at Nashville last year. I don't know how he's going to do. I think he actually's got a pretty decent chance on the road course to do really, really well. If the equipment's good, I think he's got a really good shot because Will Rogers is a very, very good road course racer. And I think especially at that COTA race for Xfinity and trucks, I think he could be an underdog. I think he's someone that I think is going to have a really good year, and I think that he will do very good in the NASCAR, the select starts next year. My expectations for him to select starts, just get some experience. I think he wants to go full-time in NASCAR again. I think he's wanted to do that for a long time, and I do hope he gets that opportunity to go full-time at some point. But I am still very happy to see that we're going to see Will Rogers in the Truck and Xfinity Series in 2022, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about J.J. Yeley. J.J. Yeley was speaking to the media at Media Day, and he says he hopes to run the full Xfinity Series season for Team owner Carl Long this year, and he will declare for Xfinity Series points as well. Now, J.J. Yeley did attempt to make this year's Daytona 500, but unfortunately he failed to qualify for this year's Daytona 500. Now, J.J. Yeley, of course, was driving for NBA Motorsports, so it's not a major surprise that he's declaring for the full season points. J.J. Yeley definitely is a NASCAR bust when you look at his Cup Series stats, but he's gotten better as a driver over the years, and I think he could kind of excel with NBA Motorsports a little bit. Yes, I know the cars are not overall the fastest at NBA Motorsports, but I think he could really, really excel with NBA Motorsports. I think he's got a good potential to do that, and hopefully J.J. Yeley can do really good this year, and I think he's making a smart play to declare for Xfinity Series points. Now, maybe he'll get some Cup starts, NBA Motorsports, if they still do end up running more races this year. It's unclear if they're going to be back or not after Daytona 500, but I do think that J.J. Yeley will do decent in Xfinity, to be honest with you. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Brett Holmes. As expected, Brett Holmes will drive for his own organization and 32 Truck Series team in 2022 for 10 races. He will race at Daytona, Las Vegas, Circuit Americas, Martinsville, Texas, Charlotte, Nashville, Richmond, Kansas, and Talladega. The 2020 ARCA Series champion made select starts in the NASCAR Truck Series last year. And let's be honest, his starts in trucks were not that impressive. But I will say that Brett Holmes Racing being a new organization, it really isn't a major shock that they struggle. I do expect that this year that this team is going to be a little bit better. I also think that they're going to have Connor Mosaic, who's going to be driving in their ARCA car this year on a part-time basis. I think that they're going to have Connor run a couple Truck Series starts as well, which Connor is a very, very talented driver. What are my expectations for this team? I expect this team to improve this year. I think that they'll go from being a team, especially unless, of course, they struggle, which I don't think they're going to. But I do think that they will improve this year. I think that their performance is going to stand out a little bit more. And I think that this year they will be a little bit better of an organization. I'm expecting a much bigger improvement. And I do think that we're going to see this team improve in 2022. To be honest with you, I expect improvements from this team. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Fontana. As it was basically reported by Bob Pires, I think on Wednesday, he reports that at Fontana, NASCAR did some grinding on the Fontana track today. About 500 feet goal was today to make it less bumpy on the backstretch. Apparently looking to try to make a little bit of grip at Fontana. One thing I love about Fontana is how bumpy the track is. Yes, they're going to have to repave it, and there's still talk of they're trying to do that half-mile track, but there's also a very big possibility that the half-mile track project may not come into fruition until after the 2020, I think after 2023, maybe into 2024, but it also could be put off, which, again, they're going to have to repave the track regardless at some point. Now, I think that they're making a good decision here to basically pave a little bit of the track instead of basically paving the whole entire track. Just pave a little bit of the track. It's going to give a little bit more grip to drivers, and some drivers are going to excel on the track better than others. In my opinion, I think it's a good decision for them to repave the track, a little bit of the track, and maybe that's what they're going to do from time to time is repave the track very, very slightly, just in case they don't go ahead and do that. So overall, in my opinion, I think it's definitely very, very interesting that they decided to do that, and in my personal opinion, I think it's a good decision from the Fontana group, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Chris Buescher. As Chris Buescher says, he does not believe that the Cup Series races at Atlanta will race like Daytona and Talladega style races. This is definitely very, very interesting because remember, actually Ross Chastain says he thinks it's actually going to race like Daytona and Talladega style races. And Chris Buescher is saying something very, very different. Now, of course, Chris Buescher did test an extra car at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and you have to remember that Atlanta Motor Speedway is being converted to it's kind of a super speedway style track with really, really high banking, with the highest banking besides Daytona and Talladega, with very extremely large banking at these racetracks. I think that he's pretty much, I think the race at Atlanta, and I actually do agree with him, though, that I think it's not going to race like what a lot of people think it's going to race like. I think it's going to race kind of, unfortunately, not great, to be honest with you. My expectations for that Atlanta race are really not through the roof, just because of the fact that I'm not really intrigued. I'm not really excited about the racing, to be honest with you, at the track. Maybe I'll be proven wrong and he'll do very, very well, but to be really perfectly honest with you, I don't expect the racing to be really, really good, but I think his comments are very, very interesting. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Timmy Hill. As according to the Ross Report reported by Casey Campbell, he reports that Timmy Hill is apparently going to drive the 38 for RSS Racing at Auto Club Speedway. This is definitely very, very interesting because this is going to probably be the most competitive ride that Timmy Hill has probably been in his career. RSS Racing is a team that really has shown pace in the past, and I do think the 38 car actually has a pretty decent shot to be a little bit faster this year. I think that the team struggled last year due to the fact that they were in a new Ford package, and also they had a lot of mechanical failures and the lack of practice qualifying, especially when you move over to new manufacturer. They absolutely struggle. But Timmy Hill is a very, very good racer. So what are my expectations for Timmy Hill coming in this race? Overall, they're not really through the roof, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't really expect much from them coming in this event. So maybe he'll prove me wrong and do really good, but hopefully he does well. I hope he does well, and hopefully we'll see him have a great run at Auto Club Speedway. I think it's his best car he's going to have, so hopefully he'll do really good at Auto Club. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Malco Automotives. As Malco Automotives has officially become the detailing products partner of Live Fast Motorsports. I don't really know much about Malco Automotives, so I'm really not sure how good the company is. But I do think overall it's good to see that Malco Automotives is jumping up the plate and working with Live Fast Motorsports. I think they've been detailing throughout this year when it comes to their sponsorships. So pretty cool, in my opinion, that Malco Automotives is stepping up to the plate. Awesome to see that Malco Automotives is stepping up to the plate to work with them in 2022. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kurt Busch. As Kurt Busch is going to join the Fox broadcast for the Truck Series at Daytona later this evening. Kurt Busch has joined the truck broadcast for the last couple of years, and in my opinion, he's been one of the better people that they've had on the Fox Sports Truck Series booth. He's done a really, really good job, in my opinion. I think he also, unfortunately, has been held back due to the lack of enthusiasm from Michael Waltrip and Vince Walsh. I think Michael Waltrip and Vince Walsh have done not that great of a job over the years, and Kurt Busch has done the best he can. And I do think that Kurt Busch in the future, if he does, because I think he really would like to, he could in the future become an analyst for Fox in the future. Now, of course, we're thinking Kevin Harvick in the future could become a Fox analyst in the near future. But in my opinion, I hope that Kurt Busch does really well tonight in the Truck Series, and hopefully we'll see some good analytical evidence from Kurt Busch in the Truck Series opener, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the United States GP. As was announced this morning that the United States Grand Prix has been extended as Circuit of the Americas till 2026. Considering that 2 years ago there was major concern that COTA may not be on the F1 schedule after 2020, it's really good to see if they're going to be back at COTA through 2026. And I think a lot of it is due to the sex of the racing at COTA. The racing at COTA last year was really, really good in my opinion, and you also have one of the largest crowds in an F1 race probably ever, and the hype around the event last year was absolutely huge, and the crowd, like I said, the atmosphere was absolutely amazing. So I'm very happy to see the F1 is returning to COTA next year. I'm really very happy about that, and I think that we're really good. Hopefully we'll see some good racing like we saw, and I'm happy to see if they're returning to COTA once again through 2026. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson is asked by the media on Media Day who he thinks is someone that really is going to be really impressive this year. And he responded by saying that he thinks that Tyler Reddick is going to have a great 2022 season. Kyle Larson giving praise to Tyler Reddick, the Cup Series champion, that being Kyle Larson, giving praise to Tyler Reddick, I think is absolutely deserved. And I 1000% agree with Kyle Larson here. Tyler Reddick is a very, very talented driver who's been really good with RSR equipment. I think RSR for the last couple of years has been B tier, and I think Tyler Reddick has really helped improve Richard Childress Racing over the last couple of years. And like I mentioned, I think that Tyler Reddick this season, I think he could have a multiple-win season. He's going to be someone that I think is very, very surprising. And I think he for sure makes it to round of 12 this year. And I think he's going to be fast. And look at how good he was at the Clash. I think a lot of people were putting Tyler Reddick under the radar. But especially after that performance at the Clash that he had, I really do think that Tyler Reddick is going to be very good. And of course, Kyle Larson's probably praising him too because he comes from that similar background that Kyle Larson came from. And I do think this year, like Kyle Larson said, I think that Tyler Reddick is going to perform better in 2022. Overall, very excited to see what Tyler Reddick can do. And the fact that the Cup Series champion is praising Tyler Reddick and he thinks that Tyler Reddick is going to have a good year, I think is really, really awesome. And I hope that we'll see some good things from Tyler Reddick this year, just like Kyle Larson thinks we will. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Larson again. As Kyle Larson said in the media center that he would like to have a test in F1 someday. Now, I think a lot of that intrigue comes from the fact that, like I mentioned, Abu Dhabi, Kyle Larson, of course, went to Abu Dhabi for the F1G, the season finale for Formula One. And there was a lot of talk maybe that he was actually going to test a McLaren F1 car last year after the Abu Dhabi GP, but that never really came to fruition. That being said, I really want to see Kyle Larson get into an F1 car. So I think Kyle Larson, in my opinion, is not only right now the best NASCAR driver, but I think right now he is the best driver in the United States right now. There's a lot of good drivers, don't get me wrong, in like other forms of motorsports, but Kyle Larson can get into any car, and he can be very, very fast very quickly. It can adapt to new cars very, very quickly as well. He's won so many dirt late model races, so many sprint car races, and has won a NASCAR Cup Series championship too. And we'll talk about Indy 500 later with Kyle Larson. But I think Kyle Larson is someone that I would love and 1000% love to see to test an F1 car. So maybe we'll see it happen, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think that Kyle Larson should at some point test a Formula 1 car. So I think he'd do a really good job in a Formula 1 car testing, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Chase Elliott. Now, Chase Elliott was asked on regards to mainstream exposure. We talked about how Jeff Gordon wants these guys to step out of the box. Chase Elliott did end up responding to this, and his response was, when I feel appreciated and respected, I'll go outside of the box of my comfort zone as they want to get in the future. Now, Chase Elliott, of course, is the most popular NASCAR Cup Series driver, but you look at the NASCAR Cup Series, look at Chase Elliott. He isn't always the most exciting. Now, I will say Chase Elliott does actually have a pretty decent personality when he's not behind a wheel, but you look at Chase Elliott, He's someone who's really trying to focus on trying to have all these really strong and really, really good runs. And he wants to focus on doing well and winning a championship and doesn't want to always get into the drama. But he does sometimes have a good personality. You look at the situation with him and Kevin Harvick last year and how angry he can get and things he can say. He's not the most boring driver, but I think especially when you're the most popular driver and you look at how popular he is, you do want to see him kind of get out of that comfort zone and go out there and do more things. So I do hope Chase Elliott does try to get out of his comfort zone in the future and try to go do great things. Again, I don't expect him probably to go like SNL and stuff in the future, but I think that Chase Elliott needs to do a little more mainstream stuff. And he's done like gaming and stuff. He's been on Twitch and stuff with like Nick at 30 and Nick Merckx. He's been on with those guys. So he does have association with some of the YouTubers aside from PK as well. But I think he will in the future eventually get out of his comfort zone, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But maybe we'll see him get out of this comfort zone, but we're not entirely sure if he will do that, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 Racing. Denny Hamlin was speaking to the media on Media Day, and he says the goal for 2311 Racing this season is for both teams to make the playoffs in 2022, that being Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace. I actually think that, and I agree with Denny Hamlin here, I think that both 2311 cars are actually going to make the playoffs here, that being, of course, Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace. Kurt Busch is a 1,000% given. Kurt Busch I think, is going to excel this year, and I think he's going to get it at least on a win or two, and I think he's going to be an underdog to win the championship this year. I don't expect him to win it, but I think he's going to be underdog this year to contend for the championship. I think Kurt Busch, of course, can get into cars very, very well and be very, very fast, and I think Kurt Busch is going to be very fast this season. Bubba Wallace as well. I think Bubba Wallace actually as well, he is actually going to have a very strong year as well. And I think he's going to improve from last year. And I'm not just saying this because I like Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace last year was absolutely God impressive. He did so well last year, especially in the year. Of course, got that victory and really improved as the year progressed. At 2311 Racing, I know they struggled at the beginning of the year last year, but as the year progressed, they became much, much better, and they showed a lot more pace. So I 1,000 agree here. I really believe that both guys are going to make the playoffs this year. Now, of course, Bubba Wallace is going to be a little bit down because of the fact that of the situation, of the fact that basically he's, of course, not been in the car as much testing, but I do think that this year he's going to improve. I really think the pace is going to be out there for him, and I think that he will improve in 2022. To be honest with you, I expect him to improve, and I think 2311 Racing will make the playoff. Both their cars will make the playoffs in 2022, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney was speaking to the media on Media Day, and he says that Team Penske only has a couple of backups for this weekend's Daytona 500. We have really talked about this parts shortage, and I think it's a lot more bigger issue than we actually realize, especially looking at the duels. The duels are not very competitive, and I think a lot of that was due to the fact of the cars. There's not as many cars and not as much inventory when it comes to next-gen parts and pieces right now, and teams are really trying to conserve and not wreck their next-gen cars, and they're trying to save their stuff so they don't run into problems later in the season. And I think that's once, again, we're going to have to keep following this story in regards to this situation, because these next-gen parts and pieces shortage are a massive problem, especially looking at the duels. One of the Team Penske cars ended up wrecking. That was Joey Logano and Harrison Burton. They have, of course, they're not going to back up. They're actually going to try to fix the car because they're involved in a dual crash. But a lot of these teams don't have a lot of backups. We've talked about this a lot, and this is going to be one of the biggest stories that we do follow throughout the season. Overall, though, I do think that potentially this will get fixed. Again, I do expect that this situation, this issue, is going to get fixed over time. I don't expect this to be a problem as we get really farther into the season. But this is something in the future that we're going to have to keep watching and following very, very closely. And we're going to have to watch and see what happens. But we're still having issues of part shortages. And I think that this could be a problem down the road if things don't get fixed in the future, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are once again talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson is asking me about the situation with the Clash, and he says that in that situation, he overreacted when he shoved Haley into the inside wall at the Clash, and then he spoke to Justin Haley after the race and apologized to him after the race. I am very happy Kyle Larson did talk to Justin Haley and at least takes responsibility for the incident. Because in my opinion, again, I am a massive Kyle Larson fan. I've been very clear I've been a Kyle Larson fan. We're in a Kyle Larson shirt right now. But Kyle Larson, what he did at the Clash was absolutely a little bit over the line, in my opinion. I don't think he wanted to intentionally wreck him, but he admits he was overreacting. He didn't realize someone was pushing him behind him. Someone like his teammate was pushing him behind him. And again, he should have realized that, but he was really mad at the time and saw wise, hey, I don't want to get bumped around and stuff. And he wasn't a big fan of that. But at the same time, he overreacted in that situation. So in my opinion, major thumbs up to him to apologize and to Justin Haley. I don't think we're going to see a rivalry from these two anymore in the future. So I'm very happy to say Kyle Larson did go and address the situation with Justin Haley. I think it's very important that he talks to him so we don't have a rivalry with him. And I'm very happy to see, in my personal opinion, I'm very happy to see that these two really probably aren't going to have issues. And I'm glad to see that Kyle Larson at least takes responsibility for the incident. Because in my opinion, Kyle Larson was over the line in that situation, but I'm very happy to see that Kyle Larson is able to go talk to Justin Haley after the race and talk to him about the situation. Because again, he overreacted and what he did was unacceptable in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Michael Massey. As it was announced yesterday that Michael Massey, as expected, has been removed as race director of the Formula One. Now, he will remain in FIA in some sort of capacity. He has been removed as race director from Formula One. Now, Michael Massey, no doubt this year, absolutely did not do a really good job. There were a lot of calls he missed this year, and especially after the Abu Dhabi farce that he made, you had to get rid of them, and I'm glad they made that call. That being said, though, I want to talk about a lot of the people on Twitter and F1 Twitter. I'm not the only one that's called a lot of people out on F1 Twitter. The way that the people that have talked on F1 Twitter and the way that people acted on F1 Twitter has been absolutely unacceptable, especially the Lewis Hamilton fans. Threatening Nicholas Latifi after the F1 championship when Nicholas Latifi really didn't do anything wrong, basically sending him death threats and stuff, that's absolutely unacceptable and a horrendous job. And I think Michael Massey got overhated to the backbone. Yes, he deserves a lot of the criticism he got for how bad he handled the F1 championship, but let's be for real here. Don't send death threats to Michael Massey. Don't do that kind of stuff. And the Lewis Hamilton stands are still getting pissed off about the farce happened 5 or 6 months ago. Seriously, get over the situation. It happened 5 or 6 months ago. I mean, Lewis Hamilton literally said today that he thinks Max Verstappen absolutely deserves the championship and a lot of the hate he got. Again, he believes Max Verstappen deserves the championship. And honestly, in my opinion, I do not like a lot of the Lewis Hamilton stands. There's so many of them on Twitter. There's so many that are still pissed off. And sometimes I call these people out because honestly, in my opinion, they deserve a lot of hate. That being said, though, I am very happy that he's gone. I think he absolutely deserved it. But in racing and stuff, a lot of times the right decision ends up getting made. I think a lot of the New York fans that don't really understand racing etiquette and how to act. But again, especially after how bad Michael Massey really handled this whole entire season with a lot of penalties, I think they made the right call, in my opinion. And they're going to have, I think, multiple other stewards that are going to come in and work with them. Again, right call, in my opinion, but I think the way that they got handled by a lot of people was absolutely unacceptable and unjust, in my honest opinion. So I think a lot of people got a lot of growing up to do on Twitter, and F1 Twitter is worse than NASCAR Twitter. And you would think that NASCAR Twitter is worse, but boy, oh boy, F1 Twitter absolutely went off the rails this year, and I really hope and pray that this does not become a much bigger issue next year. But honestly, I really think that there could be more situations with F1 Twitter, and a lot of growing up needs to be done on F1 Twitter, to be perfectly honest with you. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode. As we're talking about Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch. Now, Kyle Busch is asking the media maybe if Kurt Busch may run some truck series starts. And like I said, Kyle Busch has asked if brother Kurt Busch could appear in a KBM truck at some point now that Kurt is a Toyota driver. And Kyle Busch came out with a witty response saying, if he's got any money, sure, dollar bills, y'all. Now, this is something very interesting. Kurt Busch has made starts in the past for KBM in the truck series. I believe back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, and made a couple select starts in the truck series for the team. And of course, like we talked about with Kurt Busch is going full-time with 23XI Racing this year. Now, of course, Kurt Busch does have some sponsorship from Monster Energy that really could be a player, but also you have to look at things, too, when it comes to money and stuff. Money is a major factor. Now, there are, I believe, a few races that are available for that. I think there's 3 races left available on that 51 truck. So we got Corian's going to be a truck, I think, for 16. Kyle Busch going to be 5. So there's a couple races that are available. So maybe if he brings funding for the 2 races, maybe we'll see Kurt Busch for a couple races this year. But Kurt Busch, of course, is one of the best truck series drivers back in the early days of the truck series, but also a really great broadcaster at the same time as well when it comes to truck series racing. And I would love to see Kurt Busch make some truck series starts, bring that veteran presence back into truck series. And I think that if Kurt Busch does go into truck series, make some starts, I think he wins the races. That truck is going to be really fast, at 51 truck. And I think Corey Heim also in the 51 is going to be really good, by the way, in most of the season. But I believe that Kurt Busch needs to run some select starts in the truck series here. And I think if he does, I think he's going to be very, very competitive. So I do hope it happens if we see Kurt Busch in the truck series this year on a part-time basis. I think he'd do a really good job in the truck series, to be honest with you. I hope he does, because I think that he'll do a really good job in the truck series, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Busch Clash. Now, I don't remember who reported this, but they reported saying they have not made a decision about where next year's Busch Clash will be. They're thinking outside the box and looking at places like military bases and Mexico City. Nothing definite yet, but it will most likely be a 3-year rotation that will include the Los Angeles Coliseum. This year, NASCAR decided to make a change in regards to where the Busch Light Clash would take place, and decided to make it take place at the LA Coliseum. And the Busch Light Clash at the Los Angeles Coliseum was absolutely a massive, massive hit. And not only that, they made the event something majorly different, with so many different cool people coming in, performers like Ice Cube, you've got Pitbull, and also DJ Ski during the cautions as well. And also the racing was really, really good as well, especially during the heats and the last chance qualifiers. And overall, a very, very good race as well that was very successful. And it rejuvenated the Busch Light Clash and got a lot of people talking. Now, talking about where the event could be, I think that, in my opinion, I would not like to see it rotate. I think that we need to keep it in the LA Coliseum area. I think Los Angeles needs to be where the event takes place, at least next year. Maybe in the future, NASCAR could go ahead and decide to maybe rotate it to different cities, maybe like Mexico City. But you have to look at areas where it's going to be a little bit warmer. And if I had to go to a military base or airport, why not Bird Lane Ford Raceway in Cleveland? I know the weather may not be great out the area that time, but maybe they could open up and maybe go to Cleveland. I think that would be something that'd be very, very awesome. Overall, though, if I had to choose my opinion on where the Busch Light Clash stays, keep it in Los Angeles. The atmosphere around the event, people that were at the track saying they've never seen so many people so happy about an event there. And I think that they need to keep it in the Los Angeles area, in my honest opinion. So this is where we're probably going to follow over time. I think a world decision is going to come in the coming weeks. They have, I think, around 80 days now, if I'm not mistaken, to decide if they want to keep it in the Los Angeles area. I think they have till May 6th to make that decision. But I really think that next year they're going to do it. But again, NASCAR does have some time to make a decision if they want to go ahead and keep it in the Busch Light Clash in the Los Angeles area. But in my opinion, keeping it in that market, grow the sport overall. And you look how successful it was now. One thing that we'll be watching over the years is if this event is sustainable, which I think it will be, because, again, we don't want to bring back to Daytona because the racing at Daytona wasn't really that great, and let's be for real, no one really watched the races anyways, and really the event had lost a lot of its spark and the sparkle. No one went to the events. So I think in the future, the Busch Clash does need to stay in the Los Angeles area, but if they decide to go somewhere else, I think Mexico City or another city would be a great area to go to, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, Martin Truex Jr. was asked about contract talks, and he was asked about this, and he says it already on the contract talks. He really said, really? Well, let's talk about Martin Truex Jr. for a second. We don't really know how the length of the contract talks are. I know some people said that he does have multiple years with his contract with Joe Gibbs Racing, but there's also some people like myself who think that right now he has a contract only right now for the 2022 season. Now, Martin Truex Jr., of course, driving the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he's coming off of a very, very strong year in 2021, making the championship four and coming up second in the championship right behind Kyle Larson. That being said, though, my 2022 expectations of Martin Truex Jr. are really not through the roof just because of the fact that Martin Truex Jr. hasn't really always informed. I think Martin Truex Jr. is really going to struggle with this next-gen car. Well, not struggle, but not perform as good as he did last year. I think he's going to struggle a little bit this year and not perform as well, but I think he's still going to get a couple wins. That being said, though, Martin Truex Jr. has been openly candid about if his car does not perform well, he really does not like this next-gen car. He has said that he would be open to potentially retiring. And I think that actually is going to happen. I know a lot of people think I'm nuts and crazy, but I think that Martin Truex Jr. is going to run his final full-time season in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2022. And I think he's going to retire full-time competition similar to our Eric Almirola. Martin Truex Jr. is a much older driver. He is going to be 42 at the end of this year. And I don't think Martin Truex Jr. really is going to love this next-gen car. I know a lot of drivers have praised this car, but I think Martin Truex Jr. is going to be one driver that's going to struggle, and I don't think he's going to have fun anymore. And Marshall Jr. has accomplished a lot. He's won multiple crown jewel events, and he's of course won a NASCAR Cup Series championship. What more purely can you ask for him? But I think his performance is going to dip this year, and you look at the median age 2 drivers' performance is dipping. I think his performance is going to dip this year, and I also think that unfortunately Marshall Jr. is going to retire this year. I don't expect him to come back after 2022. I just think that after this year he's going to retire, and I think that Ty Gibbs, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is going to be going full time in his car, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt Kenseth. As was announced last night during the duels at Daytona, that Matt Kenseth is going to join the Fox Sports booth at Auto Club Speedway. Matt Kenseth, one of the best, most underrated NASCAR drivers of all time, the 2003 NASCAR Cup Series champion and winner, I believe, of 37 or 38 NASCAR Cup Series races, including multiple major events, including winning 2 Daytona 500s, the Southern 500 in 2013, and also been a contender in many other races as well. Now, of course, we know that 2020 for Matt Kenseth was not very, very good. He did not perform very well in 2020, but that was because he really had not been in the car for a couple of years. Matt Kenseth, in my opinion, is someone who was always very, very quiet, but near the end of his career, Matt Kenseth started being a little bit more outgoing and out vocal. Now, we've all seen Matt Kenseth. I think last year he actually did some sort of like party with Greg Biffle. We'll talk about a little bit in this episode as well, and Haley Deegan as well, and it was very, very awkward, but he was part of that Fox group. Now, maybe wonder maybe he was going to do some stuff with Fox Sports last year. Well, now he's joined the Fox Sports booth in 2022. And again, I'm very happy to see that they're doing a little bit of this rotation. Of course, we're going to see Tony Stewart in this year's Daytona 500. But I think it's really awesome that they're bringing a guy like Matt Kenseth, who, of course, is also a very successful driver at Auto Club, who's won a couple races at Auto Club and knows the track very, very well. I'm very intrigued to see if Matt Kenseth is going to be similar to Tony Stewart, or he's going to be very quiet and very, very chill. So I'm not sure if Matt Kenseth really has had a lot of broadcasting experience in the past. So that's one thing we're going to have to wait and watch and see. But I do think having Matt Kenseth in the booth, I think is absolutely awesome and absolutely really, really incredible. I hope he brings a lot of insight to the Fox Sports booth. This is one thing I like Fox Sports booth compared to a lot of other issues I have with Fox. This is one thing I really like about Fox Sports is the fact that they're going out and diversifying who they're going to go ahead and get in the booth. And again, I hope they bring Larry Mack on the booth as well. Larry Mack covered the duels at Daytona and did absolutely incredible. I'm vouching he gets some starts in the booth, more starts in the booth this year. So I think he's done absolutely excellent. He still has not missed a beat, even though he's not really covered races for the last few years. He never missed a beat. He's still kicking ass. But I really want to see Matt. Again, Matt Kenseth being in the booth is absolutely awesome and absolutely incredible. And I'm very happy to see that they're putting Matt Kenseth in the booth. I think he's going to do a really, really solid and a really excellent job. And I'm happy to see that Matt Kenseth is going to be in the Fox Sports booth in 2022, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott and William Byron and contract extensions for Hendrick Motorsports. Now, right now, Chase Elliott and William Byron's contract technically ends after 2022, and they were both asked in regards to contract talks. First, here's what Chase Elliott said about contract talks. He says that Rick and I have been in talks, and I feel really good where I'm at. Looking forward to this season. William Byron also is asked about it, and he says that they're going well. I've got a great relationship with Jeff and Mr. H and love being a Hendrick and just excited for what this year brings and the excitement around that team. Now, we then get to what Rick Hendrick said about contract extensions, and Rick Hendrick said that he wants Chase Elliott and William Byron to be with this team forever, and he's expecting the contract extensions to be done very, very soon for William Byron and Chase Elliott. And let's talk also about Kyle Larson as well. So he didn't mention Kyle Larson, but that's because Kyle Larson has a contract through 2023. But Jeff Gordon really wants to keep Kyle Larson around. Ball fourth, I believe that Rick Hendrick and Jeff really want to keep the core lineup they had really forever right now, including Alex Bowman, who also has a contract through 2023. But talking about William Byron and Chase Elliott, both those drivers, I believe, are going to get massive, massive extensions in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think they're going to get very, very long extensions. What I mean is that they're probably going to get like 5 or 6 year extensions in the Cup Series. They've been working on a really big deal for Chase Elliott for a long time now. We thought that actually was going to get announced last year, but he will probably get extended at some point in the coming months to get that monkey off the back. And plus, we've seen him get some sponsorship commitments. I think that Lumar's committed. I think it's either Lumar or one of the Lever's I think committed like through 2028. He's also got Lumar's committed for a couple years. There's spots that are really being committed to Chase Elliott, and I think that we'll see Chase extended for a long time. And same thing goes for William Byron as well. William Byron has Liberty University. I believe is going to be with the team through 2026. And I think that both drivers are young and are going to be very, very good. And I expect that William Byron is another driver like Tyler Reddick, who really is going to have a breakout year in the NASCAR Cup Series here. And Chase Elliott, of course, is a Cup Series champion. And we've really never seen Rick Hendrick get rid of championship caliber drivers and championship level drivers. And I think that William Byron and Chase Elliott, like I mentioned, are going to be two drivers that are going to be very successful this year in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I think that Hendrick has a very strong core lineup. And I think having such a young lineup as well, there's only one driver who's going to be 30 this year because Kyle Larson is going to be 30. Having a young team that's this good is absolutely dangerous for the competition going into the future. Now, Hendrick Motorsports, of course, can implode and struggle in the next gen era, but I don't expect that. I don't expect Hendrick Motorsports to really struggle in the next gen era. So I think those contract extensions are going to happen very, very soon, and I think that we'll see some good things come out of both drivers, and I'm very happy that they're working on contract extensions. Both of them, I think both of them are very successful and really great drivers, and I'm very happy to see that they're working on massive contract extensions for both of them heading into 2022, to be honest with you, and I'm glad to see that those contract extensions are currently being worked on and are currently being asked at this moment. To be honest with you, very happy to see that, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the first of three major stories of today's episode as we are talking about Ty Gibbs. As expected and officially announced, Ty Gibbs is officially confirmed to drive the 54 for Joe Gibbs Racing full-time in 2022, driving a 54 car. The sponsors they will have in the 54 car are Monster Energy, Interstate Batteries, and Sports Clips. And if you notice in the video, I'm in there. I got a cameo appearance in the video along with fellow NASCAR YouTuber Eric Cesar. So shout out to both of us for actually making it into the video. But we got in the video, and that's really, really cool. Thank you, Joe Gibbs, for that. I really, really do appreciate that. But now let's jump to talking about Ty Gibbs. What is there to say about Ty Gibbs? Ty Gibbs last year had an incredible season, scoring 4 victories on a part-time status and being the best rookie, I believe winning the Rookie of the Year last year in 2021. And like I said, Ty Gibbs is a very talented driver coming off also winning the ARCA Series Championship after winning, I think, 10 or 11 races last year and dominated the NASCAR Xfinity Series season in 2021. Now, what are my overall expectations for Ty Gibbs? I think he's going to be a championship contender, and I think he's going to win a lot this year. When I mean a lot, I think he's going to be the best driver, and I think he's going to win the championship this year as well. Overall, how many wins does he get? I think minimum he's going to get 6 or 7, but I would not be shocked if Ty Gibbs gets 10 or 11 races this year. And he's also going to have Chris Gale as well, who did a really good job as a crew chief for Ty Gibbs, and also will not only be a great crew chief, but also be an awesome driver coach for Ty Gibbs as well. I'm very happy Ty is getting this opportunity. He absolutely deserves it. And I do think in the future that they're going to rush him up the Cup. I think by 2024, we're going to see him a Cup. I do think there's potential, though, that even this year, we could see him run at least a one-off in Cup with Gaunt Brothers Racing, if Gaunt Brothers does show up, because that technically is a Toyota team with Joe Gibbs' development. But I am very happy to see that Ty Gibbs is getting an opportunity to go full-time. He absolutely deserves it. I know they would like to have had more sponsors for Ty Gibbs, but it's cool to see that he's getting his own image with the 54 car. Maybe decide to change the number from the 19 for the 54 when he jumps up the Cup. But I'm very happy to see that Ty Gibbs is getting his opportunity. He absolutely deserves it, in my honest opinion, and I really believe that Ty Gibbs this year is going to have a dominant year. Of course, the competition for him this year is going to have guys like AJ Allmendinger and Josh Berry and Daniel Hemrick and Landon Castle, among other drivers who are going to be very, very fast. But I think Ty Gibbs is going to be the best all year. And, of course, the aggression for him is going to have to be toned down just a little bit. But I really believe that Ty Gibbs in 2022 is going to have a very, very good year. And I'm very excited to see him racing in 2022 on a full-time basis, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we are talking about Greg Biffle. As Greg Biffle was talking to the media during Media Day, and he says that he is having conversations with NY Racing about doing additional races this season in the number 44 car. Now, Greg Biffle, of course, will actually be racing in this year's Daytona 500. He locked his way up last night to making Daytona 500, and he will race in his first Cup Series race since 2016 at Homestead Miami Speedway. What is there to say about Greg Biffle? Greg Biffle is probably one of the most successful drivers and most underrated drivers in NASCAR history. He won the 2000 Truck Series Championship and also won the 2002 NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship and had that really incredible year in 2005. And Greg Biffle, of course, is a much older driver, but he's not missed a beat. In 2019, came back to the Truck Series on that one-off return and won that Truck Series race. And in 2020, did that one-off return in, I believe, with GMS Racing in the Darlington Throwback race. Did pretty decent, finished 17th in the 24 truck, top 20, had a decent run in that event. And then, of course, in 2021, ran full-time in the SRX and was very, very impressive in the SRX season and did extremely well there and contended for overall win. I think at the first race at Stafford, not mistaken, but Doug Coby ended up winning the event. But he was the only guy that really could contend besides Tony Stewart was against Doug Coby was Greg Biffle. He was really, really fast in the event overall. And then, of course, Greg Biffle is also looking to run full-time in the SRX here as well. There was a report that came out from Stretch recently that he's looking to run full-time in the SRX again in 2022. But talking about Greg Biffle running some more races, that's, I think, really, really cool. As we talked about this last, I think, a couple days ago, that NY Racing does want to run more races this year. They want to run, I think, up to like 20, maybe almost run the full season. And I think Greg Biffle is a good driver to really help get focused now. I think Greg Biffle's also going to be someone that's a good coach, and he's talked to John Cohan for a couple of years now about joining their Cup Series organization, which I think is very, very interesting. Now, I think Greg Biffle will probably run most of the races they get, but if he doesn't run the full time in that car, what drivers could they consider to get in the car? You got other drivers that could be available. Guys like Ryan Newman, of course, who could run part-time with the team if Greg Biffle doesn't run with this team as much as he wants to. Maybe see Matt DiBenedetto get an opportunity to race a couple starts with the team in the Cup Series. I know that's a little bold, but Matt DiBenedetto, of course, is now with GMS and their Chevy team, and they do have an alliance with Hendrick with GMS. Not GMS, but he's with a Chevy team, so maybe he can go there. And also, of course, we also could see a guy like Carl Edwards come back for one-off return at some point this year. But having Greg Biffle come back and run this year is absolutely awesome, especially for a new team like NY Racing, which we initially didn't think that they were going to show up. And the fact that they're looking to run most of the year, I think is really, really awesome. And I'm happy that they're in Daytona 500. And I think Greg Biffle this year, having him back in NASCAR, I just think is something really, really cool. And you look at what this next-gen car is doing, bringing people back in the sports. Josh Villeneuve is racing in Daytona 500 this year. Boris said who could potentially race more races in Cup this year as well. Ed is, I think, like 60 or 61 years old. He's looking to run full-time this year, and not full-time, but part-time on the road course races. And then, of course, you've got guys like Carl Edwards who's been interested, and other drivers who've been very, very interested. So I do hope that Greg Biffle will get some more opportunity to race in 2022, and I hope we can see his face a lot more this year in the 2022 season, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go into the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Larson, Indianapolis 500. Now, we've talked about this a lot on the channel about Kyle Larson potentially run the Indy 500 in 2022. And we thought maybe that this year he would run the Indy 500. Well, unfortunately, Kyle Larson confirmed to the media that he will not run the Indy 500. He says it was too late for this year and says he only wants to do it with a chance to win the race. I don't think that's something you can do in a few months. Right now is not the right time. I absolutely 1,000% agree with Kyle Larson on this. I think that if we were going to know if he was going to run the Indy 500 in 2022, we already would have known by now. Ron Miller's last time wish is for Kyle Larson to run the Indy 500, but that does not mean in the future that Kyle Larson cannot run in the Indy 500. But I think he's being very, very smart because it's a lot more preparation than a lot of people realize. You have to put a lot of months into your craft and stuff and learn this stuff. And Kyle Larson, well, I think he would be able to jump into this car and be very successful. There's a lot of testing that goes into running Indy cars, and Indy cars are much different than NASCAR Cup Series car, even though they've changed it up. They're much different than Indy cars, so Indy cars are much different than NASCAR Cup Series cars. So there's a lot of work that would have to be done in regards to that. And Kyle Larson, I think he will, again, I think Kyle Larson in the future is going to run the Indy 500. I think by 2020, I think actually as early as 2023. But you also look at the competition and the teams that are available. And right now, Team Penske is most likely not even going to have a fourth car. And if we were going to know if Kyle, like I said, if we were going to know if Kyle Larson is going to run the Indy 500 this year, we would have already known by now. But I think he's being very, very smart and very, very cautious. But he said he wants to be very competitive too. And let's be real, there's not a lot of these smaller teams as well. There's not a lot of really competitive teams. A lot of these teams are small. Yes, of course, we could see some of these smaller teams be very competitive, like a Dryer Ryan Bull Racing, but they've already announced their drivers being Sage Karam and Santino Ferrucci for this year, so he's not on the question for that. And AJ Foyt, maybe they'll have a fourth car, but let's be real, they've already got their driver lineup announced with Tatiana Calderon joining the team. I think that Kyle Larson would be making a kind of a bad decision just to jump in 2022. And I think that next year, though, we are going to see him run the Indy 500. I think by 2023, we're going to see him run. Now, what team could he run for? Team Penske is definitely the most obvious to me, since Roger really would like to have Kyle Larson in the car. We've also got other drivers, too, who could run the Indy 500. Of course, you have guys like maybe Kyle Busch who could run it this year. Maybe some guys from Formula One could jump over here and race in the Indy 500. But looking at Kyle Larson, how smart he's being right here, I think he's being extremely smart to just focus on NASCAR and dirt racing. And then in the future, if he wins another Cup Series championship, which I think he's actually going to do that this year, I think it'd be really cool for him to have. But I think it would have also, at the same time, would have been, and it's kind of unfortunate because I think it would have been awesome to have him race the Indy 500 this year. You could have had guys like G, could have been racing against guys like Jimmy Johnson, of course, a 7-time champion who was technically working the team, and at least their IMSA side of stuff. You also were also thinking guys like, he's going to be racing against guys like Tony Kanaan and Ramon Grosjean and Takuma Sato, who's won the Indy 500, and Kyle Kirkwood and Pat O'Ward and Alex Palou. So many really excellent and really gifted and God-talented drivers. And I think that he would still be outmatched, but I also think that if all the drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series who really could get into an IndyCar and succeed, I think he's one driver in the Cup Series, maybe besides Kyle Busch, who I think could really get into a car and excel very, very quickly. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of testing, and they especially have been already testing these Indy cars. I guess, of course, it's for street course racing, but they've already been testing Indy cars at St. Petersburg over the last couple weeks, which they're not testing right now. But we've got IndyCar that starts, I think, less than 2 weeks. I think it starts next week, if I'm not mistaken. And we've got early start for IndyCar in many, many years. And they've got a lot of testing, a lot of preparation to go to Indy 500. It's like sports car racing. There's a lot of preparation for that as well. But like I said, I do believe that Kyle Larson next year is going to run it. I think that Kyle Larson will get behind an IndyCar next year, and I think that he could be someone that's very, very successful next year. So maybe we'll see Kyle Larson back behind the wheel of an IndyCar in 2023, and maybe we'll see him test this year. Maybe we'll see him get a test at the end of the year after the NASCAR season's over. Maybe he'll do his rookie orientation, and maybe we'll see him announced for next year. But I think if he runs next year, it'll have to be announced a lot sooner than this. So we're not going to see any NASCAR drivers unless Kyle Busch all of a sudden decides to run the Indy 500 this year. I don't think we're going to see any NASCAR Cup Series drivers attempt the double, but I think that he would be the most successful driver when it comes to the doubles. So overall, I'm it's definitely unfortunate Kyle Larson is not racing Indy 500, but in my opinion, I think he's making the right decision and the right call, to be honest with you. So anyway, that is today's NASCAR Motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get jump below for that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think that Kyle Larson will race the Indy 500 2023 or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Greg Biffle potentially running some more Cup Series races in 2022? Let me know in the comments below. We still got Daytona stuff coming out. We've got a Truck Series view dropping. Then you got 2 videos dropping tomorrow. And I have something special that might be coming out Monday that I might detail here in the future that you guys might want to check out in the future. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports stuff on the channel like this. Take care, everybody. Got a lot of content that's on the way for you guys.